My unexpected life as a virtual reality mogul. I never planned on becoming a tech millionaire, but when your startup accidentally creates the most addictive virtual reality game in history, sometimes the universe has other plans. My name is Marcus Chen, and 3 years ago, I was just another burned-out software developer with a stupid idea and a mountain of student loans. Now I'm the accidental CEO of America's hottest VR company, trying desperately to maintain my sanity while navigating venture capitalists, celebrity endorsements, and the small issue of my game becoming a literal national addiction. This is how I accidentally disrupted reality itself. The startup cliché. "This is the worst idea I've ever heard," said Danny, tossing a half-eaten protein bar at my head. "And I was there when you pitched the AI-powered toilet that gives you pep talks." We were sitting in what generously could be called an office, actually the garage of our shared rental house in Austin. The August heat made the air feel like hot soup, our ancient window unit AC sputtering asthmatically in the background. 3 folding tables formed our workstations, and the Wi-Fi routinely failed whenever it rained or someone used the microwave upstairs. "You're missing the vision," I insisted, spinning in my $40 desk chair from Target. "Everyone's doing hyperrealistic VR. What if we went completely in the opposite direction? Deliberately bad graphics?" Zeke looked up from his computer, pushing his perpetually sliding glasses back up his nose. "That's your $1 million idea?" "Not just bad graphics," I corrected, pulling up my hideously drawn concept art. "Low poly, intentionally glitchy, but with incredible physics and haptic feedback. Like, the aesthetic is garbage, but the feel is more real than reality." Our 4th teammate, Riley, emerged from under her desk where she'd been napping, her bright blue hair sticking up at odd angles. "I don't hate it," she mumbled, reaching for her energy drink. "It's kind of like anti-perfectionism, a middle finger to the uncanny valley." "Exactly," I pointed emphatically. "Plus, it'll run on cheaper hardware. We make it accessible, focus on the experience rather than the visuals." "And call it what again?" Danny asked skeptically. "Glitch life." They all groaned simultaneously. "Look," I continued, undeterred. "We're 4 burnouts who quit our soul-sucking fang jobs to disrupt something. We have exactly 8 months of runway before we have to crawl back to corporate America. What do we have to lose?" This is the part in most success stories where the skeptical friends have a change of heart, rally around the visionary leader, and embark on a montage of productive coding sessions fueled by pizza and belief. What actually happened was Zeke shrugged and said, "I've got student loans that'd make a doctor weep, so sure, let's try your garbage game idea." And so Glitch Life was born, not with a bang, but with a collective why not. The Frankenstein Code. Here's what they don't tell you about creating a startup. It's 90% fixing bugs, 9% arguing about the most efficient way to organize the Slack channels, and 1% actual innovation. For 3 months, we coded like maniacs. I handled the core engine, Zeke built our proprietary physics system. Riley created the worlds and NPCs, and Danny, our reluctant business person with an MBA she claimed to regret daily, tried to figure out how to market intentional ugliness as a feature, not a bug. Our first prototype was so bad, even I had to admit it was concerning. The avatars looked like sentient potatoes with occasional limbs. Buildings would sometimes float. The physics were amazing, though. You could feel the difference between stepping on sand versus concrete, could sense the weight when you picked up objects. "This is either brilliant or a career-ending disaster," Riley said, removing her headset after our first full playtest. "Could be both," Zeke added. We kept refining. The breakthrough came when Riley had the idea to incorporate actual glitches as game mechanics. Suddenly, clipping through walls wasn't a bug. It was a superpower you could earn. Texture pop-in became reality shifting. Missing animations became quantum teleportation. We leaned hard into the chaos, creating a world where the glitches were features. We built an in-game economy around finding and exploiting these reality quirks. We added haptic feedback, so precise you could feel individual raindrops. By month 5, we had something playable. By month 6, we had something addictive. Holy shit, Danny said after her 3rd consecutive hour in our virtual world. I actually forgot the graphics were terrible. It just feels real. That's when I knew we might be onto something. Not because it was pretty, but because after a while, your brain stopped caring about the visuals. The sensory experience was so convincing that players began to accept the glitchy aesthetics as just another reality. When we launched our beta to 50 trusted friends, 48 of them failed to show up to work the next day. We had accidentally created digital crack, the overnight success that took 6 months. Our official launch was scheduled for a Thursday in April. We had exactly 0 marketing budget, 1 hastily built website, and the collective social media reach of 4 introverts whose most viral moment was when Zeke accidentally set his beard on fire during a video call with a potential investor. So our launch strategy is hope. I asked Danny the night before. Our launch strategy is that we've got a genuinely unique product, and the prayer that word of mouth still works, she replied, typing furiously on her laptop. Also, I got us a booth at the Austin Indie Game Expo next month if we don't immediately go bankrupt. The morning of launch, we gathered around Zeke's monitor to watch the download counter. Our goal was 500 downloads in the first week, enough to justify continuing. We hit 500 in the first hour. By lunchtime, gaming forums were buzzing. By dinner, we'd crashed our servers twice. By midnight, we had 50,000 downloads and a trending hashtag on Twitter. What the actual hell is happening? Riley whispered, staring at the numbers like they might be a hallucination. The reviews were insane. Glitch life makes me feel like I'm doing digital drugs. I can't stop playing. Spent 8 hours in glitch life yesterday. Forgot to eat. 10 out of 10 would recommend malnutrition. The graphics gave me an existential crisis, but the gameplay gave me a spiritual awakening. 3 days after launch, we got our first cease and desist letter from a university because so many students had stopped attending classes. A week later, a tech blog ran the headline, "Glitch Life, the VR game so addictive it should be illegal." That headline turned out to be prophetic when a senator whose son had failed midterms due to playing our game for 72 hours straight called for congressional hearings on VR addiction. Our server costs were bankrupting us. A good problem to have, but still a problem. We implemented a $5.99 monthly subscription in desperation. We expected backlash. Instead, our user base doubled within a week of adding the paywall. "We need to talk about scaling," Danny said one morning, barging into the garage with 4 coffees and dark circles under her eyes. "We've got venture capitalists blowing up my LinkedIn. We've got server demands we can't meet. And CNN just requested an interview. Also," Zeke added, "I just checked our bank account. We have $2 million in revenue. From last week alone." I remember staring at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. "So, we're rich?" Riley asked, her voice small. "No," Danny corrected. "We're problematically successful and completely unprepared for it." She was right. We'd created Glitch Life to be an indie darling, a modest success that might let us avoid returning to corporate jobs. Instead, we'd accidentally spawned a cultural phenomenon, and none of us had the first clue how to handle it. Accidental influencer. 6 months after launch, Glitch Life had 20 million active users. Our company was valued at $400 million, mostly theoretical money, as Danny constantly reminded us, and I was having panic attacks in the bathroom of our new downtown Austin office. Marcus. Riley knocked on the stall door. The New York Times reporter is here, and your shirt has a mustard stain. I emerged, splashing water on my face. Why am I doing press? You know I'm terrible with people. Because you're the founder and reluctant face of the company, she replied, handing me a clean shirt from her backpack. Also, Danny says if you tank another interview, she'll make you handle the next investor call instead. The transition from anonymous coder to tech CEO had been rough. I'd never wanted to be a public figure. I just wanted to make weird stuff and get paid for it. Now I was expected to have opinions on digital ethics, the future of technology, and inexplicably fashion trends, since Glitch Life's aesthetic had somehow influenced real-world clothing. The Times interview actually went okay until the reporter asked about addiction concerns. We obviously don't want people neglecting their real lives, I said carefully, repeating the line Danny had made me memorize. We're implementing features to encourage healthy usage. Like what? The reporter pressed. I blanked on the prepared answer. Well, we're adding a feature that makes the experience progressively more unpleasant after 4 hours of continuous play. The haptics start simulating the feeling of sitting in something slightly wet. The reporter stared at me. It's very effective, I added weakly. That quote, naturally, became the headline. The worst part wasn't the press or the business demands. It was that I barely had time to work on the actual game anymore. The thing I'd created was now being developed by a team of 30 people, while I sat in meetings about market expansion and content moderation policies. I hate my life, I confessed to Zeke one night as we sat on the roof of our office building, sharing a bottle of expensive whiskey we could now easily afford. We finally made a successful game, and I never get to play it or improve it. Yeah, he sighed, looking out at the Austin skyline. But on the plus side, I paid off my student loans. All $347,000 of them. Jesus, what did you study? Nuclear medicine on the moon. Double PhD in computational physics and bad financial decisions. He grinned. Worth every penny now. Our moment of peace was interrupted by Danny bursting through the roof access door, waving her phone like it contained launch codes. We've been approached for an acquisition, she announced breathlessly. Let me guess, I said. Meta? Google? Amazon? All three, actually, she replied, plus 2 others. Highest offer is $2.1 billion. Zeke choked on his whiskey. I just stared at the stars, feeling strangely empty. We'd be set for life, Danny continued. They'd handle the scaling issues, the legal challenges, the whole corporate side. And control the creative direction, I added quietly. Well, yes, she admitted. That's generally how acquisitions work. I took the bottle from Zeke and took a long drink. Let's think about it. But I already knew my answer. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The cult of glitch. The acquisition offers triggered an existential crisis that lasted approximately 3 weeks, during which I alternated between fantasizing about taking the money and disappearing to a beach somewhere, and having stress dreams about our game becoming corporate shovelware. Meanwhile, Glitch Life continued to evolve in ways none of us had anticipated. Users had started forming complex societies within the game. They'd created currencies, governance systems, even religions based on the glitches we'd programmed. Some players barely left the virtual world, connecting through top-of-the-line full-body haptic suits that let them feel everything from temperature changes to the texture of virtual grass. Reports surfaced of glitch life withdrawal, people experiencing actual physical symptoms when forced to disconnect for extended periods. Psychologists were publishing papers. Schools were banning our logo from clothing. And I was hiding in my new condo, avoiding decisions about the future of what we'd built. You need to come to the office. Riley said when she called me one morning. "There's something you should see in person." When I arrived, she led me to the community management department, a team that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. "Show him," she told the lead community manager, a woman named Priya, who seemed perpetually unfazed by the chaos of our user base. Priya pulled up a video. This was uploaded yesterday. It's from a Glitch Life meetup in Chicago. The footage showed hundreds of people in a convention center, many dressed in blocky, low-poly costumes mimicking our game's aesthetic. Some had painted themselves in solid colors, with black outlines to look like NPCs. "Okay, cosplay, that's cool, but not unusual," I started. "Keep watching," Priya said. The camera panned to a stage, where someone was giving what could only be described as a sermon about embracing the glitch as a philosophy of life. The crowd chanted back responses. "Is this a religious gathering?" I asked, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. "They call themselves glitchers," Priya explained. "The basic philosophy is that reality itself is a kind of imperfect simulation, and the glitches, the imperfections, are what make life meaningful. They've essentially turned your game design into a metaphysical worldview." "That's insane," I whispered. "It gets weirder," Riley added. "Show him the streamers." Priya pulled up another set of videos, live streams of top Glitch Life players who had become celebrities in their own right. They'd constructed elaborate real-world sets that mimicked the game's environments, wore full haptic suits, and broadcast themselves living almost entirely in our virtual world. The top streamer, who called himself Glitch King, had 5 million subscribers and had reportedly purchased a mansion with his streaming income. In his stream, he was conducting what appeared to be a marriage ceremony between 2 other high-profile players. "Is that legal?" I asked. "Not in any recognized jurisdiction," Priya replied, "but they don't seem to care." I stared at the screens, watching the empire we'd accidentally created. People weren't just playing our game. They were living in it, building cultures around it, finding meaning in it. "The acquisition offers," I said finally. "If we sell, what happens to all this?" Riley shrugged. "Depends who buys us. Best case, they preserve what makes the game special while fixing our scaling issues. Worst case, they monetize it to death, add ads everywhere, and kill the community within a year." I thought about our original vision, a janky, glitchy alternative to the hyper-polished mainstream VR experiences. We'd wanted to create something that felt real despite looking fake. We'd succeeded beyond our wildest expectations, but at what cost? "Schedule a meeting with the team," I told Riley. "I've made my decision." The counteroffers. The following week, our original foursome sat in our now unnecessarily fancy conference room with views of downtown Austin, drinking coffee from mugs with our company logo, a deliberately pixelated thumbs up. "I don't want to sell," I announced without preamble. Danny groaned. "Marcus, please tell me this isn't just about your artistic integrity or whatever. We're talking about billions of dollars." "It's not just that," I said, though it was partially that. "I've been watching what's happening with our community. They've connected with this world we've built in ways I never expected. If a big tech company takes over, that magic dies." "So your counterproposal is?" Zeke prompted. "We stay independent, but we scale smartly. We take on minority investors instead of selling outright. We maintain creative control." Riley nodded slowly. "I'm on board with that. But we're still a tiny company trying to support a platform with more daily users than some small countries. We need help. And we'll get it," I assured her. "But on our terms." Danny, ever practical, pulled out her tablet. "I've actually been working on scenarios. If we take moderate investment at our current valuation, we could expand infrastructure, hire key positions, and still maintain majority control." "You've been planning for this?" I asked, surprised. She gave me a look. "Marcus, I know you better than you think. I figured there was maybe a 20% chance you'd take the acquisition offers. I thought it was more like 5%, Zeke chimed in. I said 0, Riley added with a grin. I laughed for what felt like the first time in weeks. Am I that predictable? You once spent 3 days coding an alternative to GitHub because you didn't like their new button design, Zeke reminded me. You're not exactly the take the money and conform type. We spent the next 6 hours outlining our counterproposal. We would accept $300 million in funding in exchange for a 20% equity stake. We would expand our infrastructure and team, but maintain full creative control. And most importantly, we would develop GlitchLife not as a product to be monetized, but as a platform for virtual expression. When we presented this to our top suitors, 2 immediately walked away. 1 tried to sweet-talk us with promises of creative freedom that their contracts didn't actually guarantee. But 2, including 1 major player, expressed genuine interest in our vision. After weeks of negotiation, we signed with Wayfinder Ventures, a firm with a track record of letting creative companies remain creative. The deal closed on the 1-year anniversary of our launch. That night, we celebrated not with champagne in a fancy restaurant, but by actually playing our own game together for the first time in months. I forgot how fun this actually is, Danny admitted as her blocky avatar danced on top of a glitched-out skyscraper that rendered only half its textures. That was the whole point, I reminded her, using an exploit to propel myself through the virtual air. Fun first, graphics last. As we played, I felt the weight of executive decisions lifting from my shoulders, replaced by the simple joy of experiencing the world we'd created. We were still in charge of our destiny. I just didn't realize our destiny was about to get much weirder. The congressional hearing. Mr. Chen, would you say your company deliberately designed GlitchLife to be addictive? I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, acutely aware of the C-SPAN cameras. The wood-paneled Senate hearing room felt simultaneously too large and too small. 6 months after securing our funding, I found myself testifying before the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Protection about the potentially harmful effects of immersive virtual reality. In other words, our game was now so popular it had attracted government attention. Senator, we designed GlitchLife to be engaging, not addictive, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. There's an important distinction. Is there? Senator Blackburn from Tennessee leaned forward. Because I have reports of people losing jobs, failing classes, even developing physical symptoms when unable to access your game. That sounds like addiction to me. Next to me, our hastily hired policy advisor slid a note. Emphasize user choice and responsibility. We take user well-being very seriously, I continued. We've implemented playtime limits, mental health resources, and reality check notifications. But ultimately, GlitchLife is entertainment. We can't control how people choose to engage with it. Yet you profit from maximizing that engagement, another senator interjected. We profit from creating an experience people value, I countered, going off script. The glitchy aesthetic of our world is intentionally designed to remind users they're in a game. Unlike our competitors, we're not trying to replace reality. We're offering an alternative perspective on it. This went on for nearly 3 hours. Questions about data collection, minimal by industry standards. Questions about content moderation, a growing challenge. Questions about the so-called glitcher movement, not officially affiliated with us. By the time we broke for lunch, I was mentally exhausted. In the hallway, Danny handed me a bottle of water and an energy bar. You're doing great, she assured me. Just keep emphasizing user agency and our safety measures. This is insane, I muttered. 2 years ago, I was debugging code in a garage. Now I'm defending virtual reality before Congress. Welcome to success, she said dryly. The afternoon session focused on proposed regulations, mandatory break periods, age restrictions, addiction warning labels. Some seemed reasonable. Others would effectively cripple the entire VR industry. As the hearing concluded, Senator Blackburn fixed me with a stern look. "Mr. Chun, I hope you understand the responsibility you have. Your technology is changing how people interact with reality itself. That power demands accountability." "I couldn't agree more, Senator," I replied, meaning it. "We're navigating uncharted territory, but I believe virtual experiences like Glitch Life can enrich lives rather than detract from them, if developed ethically." Outside the Capitol, reporters swarmed with questions. Our PR team hustled me toward a waiting car, but I paused when I noticed a small group of people watching from across the street. They were dressed in blocky, low-poly costumes, glitchers, come to show support. One held up a sign, "Reality has always been glitchy." I gave them a small wave before ducking into the car. "Those hearings could have gone worse," Zeke said that evening as we decompressed in our hotel suite. "At least nobody explicitly called for your imprisonment." "Always looking on the bright side," I replied, loosening my tie. "But this is just the beginning. We're creating something that's changing culture, changing behavior. We can't pretend that doesn't come with real responsibilities." Riley, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, looked up from her tablet. "Have you seen this?" She passed it over. On the screen was a news article about a school in Finland that had incorporated Glitch Life into its curriculum, using our virtual world to teach physics, social organization, even economics, by analyzing the emergent systems our players had created. "It's not all doom and congressional hearings," she said. "We're making something that matters." That night, I lay awake thinking about Senator Blackburn's words. We were changing how people interact with reality. The question was, were we changing it for the better? The reality glitch. 2 weeks after the congressional hearings, we encountered a problem that no amount of policy expertise or PR spin could address. Reality itself seemed to be glitching. It started with reports from our highest volume players, those who spent 8+ hours daily in Glitch Life. They claimed to be experiencing visual anomalies in the real world that mimicked our game's glitches. "Probably just eye strain," our head of user safety suggested during our crisis meeting. "Extended VR use can cause temporary visual disturbances." But the reports kept coming, becoming more specific and consistent. Users described seeing texture pop in on real buildings, momentary polygon reduction on physical objects, even occasional clipping through solid surfaces. "This has to be some kind of mass hysteria," Danny insisted, "or a coordinated troll campaign." Then Zeke, who had been running tests with our most advanced haptic systems, admitted he'd experienced it himself. "I was getting coffee yesterday," he told us, removing his glasses nervously. The barista's face briefly pixelated, just for a second, but it wasn't my imagination. Riley and I exchanged worried glances. "How many hours have you logged in the full haptic setup recently?" I asked. "Maybe 40 this week. I've been stress testing the new neural feedback system." Our neural feedback system was our most cutting-edge feature, a non-invasive method of stimulating sensory neurons to create more realistic experiences. Zeke had developed it based on research from his PhD work. "We need to temporarily disable the neural feedback component," I decided, "and bring in some neuroscience consultants ASAP." We issued a carefully worded update announcement citing system maintenance, rather than potentially alarming our user base. Meanwhile, we quietly reached out to researchers specializing in neuroplasticity and perception. Dr. Amara Lin from Stanford arrived at our offices the following day. After signing multiple NDAs, we briefed her on the situation. "Fascinating," she said after reviewing our technology and user reports. "You may have inadvertently created a form of perceptual adaptation more powerful than anyone anticipated. Meaning, I prompted. Your brain is remarkably adaptable, she explained. When consistently exposed to altered visual rules, like your intentionally glitchy aesthetic combined with realistic physical feedback, the brain begins to apply those same interpretive rules to regular vision. It's similar to how people who wear color-shifting glasses eventually begin to see normally through them. But our users aren't wearing anything in the real world, Riley pointed out. They don't need to be, Dr. Lin said. You've essentially trained their visual processing systems to expect and interpret reality through the lens of your game's rules. The more immersive the experience, and the longer the exposure, the stronger the effect. Is it dangerous? Danny asked the question we were all thinking. Probably not permanently, Dr. Lin replied, though her hesitation wasn't reassuring. But I'd strongly recommend implementing strict usage limits until we better understand the phenomenon. That night, after everyone had gone home, I stayed in our testing lab and strapped myself into our most advanced haptic system. I needed to experience this firsthand. For hours into an intense glitch life session, I removed the headset and looked around the lab. At first, everything seemed normal. Then, as I focused on the door, I saw it. A momentary flicker where the door seemed to reduce to its basic geometric shape before snapping back to normal. I blinked hard, but it happened again. The world itself seemed to be running on our game engine. Well, shit, I said to the empty room. The next day, we implemented mandatory break periods. The system would now force quit after 2 hours of continuous play, requiring at least 30 minutes before resuming. We cited performance optimization rather than potential reality breakdown as the reason. Most users grumbled but accepted the changes. The diehards found workarounds almost immediately, creating multiple accounts to switch between or modifying their client software. Meanwhile, Dr. Lin and 2 additional researchers set up shop in our offices, conducting tests with volunteer users. Their preliminary findings confirmed our fears. Extended exposure to glitch life was indeed causing temporary perceptual shifts in regular vision. The good news, Dr. Lin told us after 2 weeks of research, is that the effects appear to fade after 48 to 72 hours of abstinence from the game. No permanent damage has been detected. And the bad news? I asked. The bad news is you've accidentally discovered that human perception is far more malleable than we previously understood, and your game is essentially a mass experiment in reality modification. Great. Just great. The choice. 3 years after launching Glitch Life from a sweaty garage, I found myself facing a decision I never could have anticipated. Whether to fundamentally alter our creation or risk altering how millions of people perceived reality itself. The research team had confirmed that our neural feedback system, combined with our unique visual aesthetic, was creating a form of perceptual bleeding, where the brain began applying game world logic to real-world stimuli. The effect was temporary but intensified with continued use. We have 3 options, I told our core team during a tense meeting. 1. We significantly modify the neural feedback system to prevent perceptual bleeding, essentially making our experience less realistic. 2. We maintain strict usage limits and hope users comply. Or 3. We shut down temporarily until we fully understand what's happening. Shutting down would bankrupt us, Danny pointed out, and our investors would revolt. Strict usage limits aren't working, Riley added. People are using VPNs and multiple accounts to bypass them. So we modify the experience, Zeke concluded, looking pained. The neural feedback system was his baby, after all. Make it less reality bending. I stared at the data on the screen, feeling the weight of responsibility. Glitch Life wasn't just a game anymore. For millions, it had become a second home, a community, even a worldview. We'd created something that transcended entertainment, and that made our decisions all the more consequential. There's a fourth option, I said slowly, an idea forming. What if instead of fighting the perceptual bleeding, we lean into it, but with purpose? They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Hear me out, I continued. Dr. Lin's research shows that the perception shifts aren't harmful, just disconcerting. What if we reframe glitch life not as pure entertainment, but as a tool for perspective shift, a way to deliberately experience reality differently, then return with new insights? You want to market a reality-altering experience as a feature? Danny asked incredulously. Not exactly. I want to transform glitch life into something more intentional. We add a reality integration mode with carefully designed experiences meant to be brought back into the real world. Controlled perceptual shifts with purpose. Like what? Riley asked, skepticism evident. Like exercises that enhance pattern recognition, or experiences that increase empathy by literally letting you see through someone else's perceptual framework. The research team has already noted that some perceptual changes have potentially beneficial applications. Over the next few weeks, we worked closely with Dr. Lin's team to redesign glitch life. We didn't abandon the core game, the weird, wonderful world our users had built communities within, but we added a new layer specifically designed to harness the perceptual bleeding effect constructively. We called it perceptual training and marketed it as a complementary experience to the main game. Limited sessions, carefully structured, with clear guidance on integration periods afterward. To our surprise, the scientific community responded with cautious enthusiasm. Several research institutions requested partnerships to study the effects. The media narrative shifted from addictive VR game to revolutionary perceptual technology. When we relaunched 6 months later, user numbers initially dropped. The mandatory limits and structured approach didn't appeal to everyone, but a new demographic emerged. People specifically interested in controlled perspective shifts. Therapists began utilizing custom modules for treating anxiety and PTSD. Education researchers explored applications for learning differences. The congressional subcommittee called me back to testify again, but this time with a different tone. This represents a significant pivot toward responsible innovation, Senator Blackburn acknowledged, though she still pushed for regulatory oversight. Not everyone was happy. The hardcore glitch life community argued we'd sold out by reframing their beloved chaotic world as a self-improvement tool. Some found ways to hack older versions of the software. Others migrated to less scrupulous competitors who promised unrestricted experiences. But many stayed, adapting to the new paradigm and even helping design perceptual training modules based on their experiences. I never thought I'd be running a perception-altering platform with therapeutic applications, I told Riley one evening as we tested a new module designed to enhance creative problem-solving. I just wanted to make a weird game with bad graphics. That's how innovation usually works, she replied, adjusting her headset. You set out to do one thing and end up somewhere entirely different. You know what's ironic? I said. We originally called it Glitch Life because we were embracing the imperfections in virtual reality. Now, we're using those same imperfections to change how people experience actual reality. Life imitating art, imitating life, she agreed. Very meta. Please never use that word around me again, I groaned, thinking of one particular acquisition offer we'd rejected. The new reality. 5 years after launching from that sweltering garage, Glitch Life had evolved into something none of us could have predicted, a platform straddling the boundaries between entertainment, education, and therapy. Our user base had shifted and diversified. We still had the core gamers who loved our quirky virtual world, but they were now joined by researchers, educators, therapists, and people simply looking to experience reality differently. The perceptual training modules had expanded into specialized applications: creativity enhancement, phobia treatment, cognitive flexibility exercises. One particularly successful program helped people with autism better understand neurotypical social cues by temporarily altering how they perceived interactions. We'd gone public the previous year, not through a traditional IPO, but through a direct listing that allowed us to maintain our unique corporate structure. The four of us remained in control, though our roles had evolved. Zeke now headed a research division. Riley led content development. Danny handled the corporate side with unexpected enthusiasm. And I was still figuring out my place in this new reality. "You know what's weird?" I said to Zeke as we tested a prototype of our next-generation haptic system. "We accidentally created technology that changes how people see the world. And now we're a respectable company with a research division and ethical guidelines." "Growing up is strange," he agreed, adjusting sensors on the prototype gloves. "Remember when our biggest concern was making rent?" I laughed. "I miss the garage sometimes. Everything was simpler." "Simpler, sure, but we're doing something that matters now." He was right. For all the stress and responsibility, we were pioneering technology that was genuinely helping people. The letters we received from individuals whose perception training had helped them overcome anxieties, from teachers whose students engaged differently with learning, from people who simply found joy in experiencing reality through a different lens, made the congressional hearings and regulatory headaches worthwhile. Our biggest challenge remained balance, maintaining Glitch Life as a creative virtual space while responsibly managing its real-world perceptual effects. We'd implemented systems that allowed users to choose their level of immersion and purpose, from pure entertainment to structured therapeutic applications. "The new sensory calibration looks good," Zeke said, reviewing the test results. "Much more precise control over which perceptual systems are affected." "That should make the clinicians happy," I replied. "They've been asking for more granular control over the perceptual effects." Zeke nodded, removing the prototype gloves. "It's still surreal to think about. We created something that literally changes how people see the world. With great power comes great responsibility," I quipped, though the weight behind those words was real. The unexpected legacy. On the 5th anniversary of Glitch Life's launch, we held a company-wide celebration at our headquarters, now a converted warehouse in East Austin with enough space for our 200 employees and the occasional reality-bending experiment. The space was decorated with physical manifestations of our virtual world's aesthetic: blocky furniture, intentionally pixelated art, and walls that seemed to glitch if you looked at them from certain angles. Real-world glitch, now a legitimate design movement. "I'd like to propose a toast," Danny announced, raising her glass. She'd traded her perpetually frazzled startup demeanor for a more polished executive presence, though the dark circles under her eyes suggested some things never change. "To embracing the glitch. To embracing the glitch," everyone echoed. As the party continued around me, I slipped away to the rooftop terrace, seeking a moment of quiet. Austin's skyline sparkled before me, so different from the view we'd had from that garage 5 years ago. "Hiding from your own party?" Riley appeared beside me, her blue hair now streaked with silver, an intentional style choice rather than stress-induced. Very on-brand. I smiled, just taking a moment to process. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" "Not in a million years," she admitted. "I thought we'd make a quirky game have modest success, and maybe avoid returning to corporate hell. I didn't expect to accidentally pioneer neural perception-altering technology and spawn a cultural movement. Life's glitchy that way." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. Finally, she asked the question I'd been asking myself lately. "What's next for us, Marcus?" "For Glitch Life," I'd been pondering this question for months. Our technology had evolved beyond mere entertainment, beyond even the therapeutic applications we'd developed. We were fundamentally changing how people experienced reality. Temporarily, safely, but profoundly nonetheless. I think we're just scratching the surface, I said slowly. The ability to shift perception isn't just about fun or even therapy. It's about expanding human experience itself. Sounds grandiose. Maybe, but think about it. Throughout history, humans have used everything from meditation to hallucinogens to art to experience reality differently. We've created a technology that allows for controlled, specific perceptual shifts without the downsides of traditional methods. So, where does that lead? She pressed. I've been working with a team of neuroscientists and philosophers on something new, I admitted. We're calling it collaborative perception. Riley raised an eyebrow. Sounds intriguing and slightly ominous. It's a system that would allow multiple people to share perceptual frameworks in real time, not just in VR, but as an overlay on physical reality. You want people to literally see through each other's eyes. Not exactly. More like sharing the lens through which you interpret what you see. Imagine a world where empathy isn't just emotional but perceptual, where you could temporarily experience how someone else processes the world. Riley whistled. That's revolutionary and terrifying. It's both, I acknowledged. The applications are endless. Conflict resolution, cross-cultural understanding, even helping neurotypical and neurodivergent people better understand each other's perspectives. The ethical implications are just as endless, she pointed out, which is why we're moving slowly, collaborating with ethicists and regulators from the start rather than apologizing later. I think we've learned that lesson. A cool breeze swept across the terrace, carrying the sounds of celebration from below. Our accidental empire, built on embracing imperfection rather than chasing photorealism. You know what's funny? Riley said, after a while, we named it Glitch Life because we were embracing bugs as features. Now that philosophy has spread far beyond our game. She was right. What had started as a quirky design choice had evolved into something approaching a worldview. The recognition that reality itself is messy, imperfect, and subjective, and that those glitches are what make life interesting. I've been thinking about writing a book, I confessed, about our journey and what we've learned about perception, reality, and technology's role in both. My unexpected life as a virtual reality mogul, Riley suggested with a grin. I laughed. Something like that. Though I'm still living that unexpected life, figuring it out as I go. Aren't we all? She clinked her glass against mine. To the next chapter. To the next chapter, I echoed. As we stood there overlooking the city, I thought about how far we'd come from that sweaty garage. We'd set out to make a weird little game with bad graphics and accidentally changed how people experienced reality itself. The journey had been chaotic, stressful, and utterly unpredictable, glitchy in every sense. But maybe that was the point. Life doesn't render perfectly. It clips and bugs and fails to load textures sometimes. The magic happens when you embrace those imperfections rather than trying to eliminate them. In creating Glitch Life, we'd inadvertently created a metaphor for life itself, a beautifully imperfect experience that feels real not despite its glitches, but because of them. And as for what came next, like reality itself, that remained gloriously, terrifyingly unrendered, waiting for us to help shape it, one glitch at a time. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible content.